As I mentioned, Frank Polkowski, our legal counsel, is walking in the door right now. Right on your feet. I hope you don't mind if we jump right into you. Okay. Just as again an introduction, this is Frank Hobart. Frank is really our expertise in tribal affairs. Everybody's at least a little bit aware of our geopolitical issues here in Hobart, and we rely on Frank for a lot of his expertise. And the first agenda item tonight is the legal review. Okay. So, all right.
Well, I'd just like to give you a little bit about an update on some of the pending litigation that relate to tribal matters. Those of you who were here last year will hear the same two cases. The wheels of justice turn slowly. The one has to do with the fee to trust applications and village's objections to those requests. There currently are several requests for parcels to be put into trust by the United Tribe. 142 parcels, I believe, totaling approximately 2,900 acres. The BIA, Bureau of Indian Affairs, that makes the initial decision of whether or not that request will or will not be granted, has issued a decision granting that request for, I believe, about 500 or 600 of those acres. Every one of those decisions was appealed by the village of Hobart to the Interior Board of Indian Affairs, which is like an administrative court in Washington, D.C. So those have been appealed. The balance of roughly 2,900 acres, those applications, there's been no decision on yet, and therefore no appeal by either side. The ones that have been appealed, I think the oldest one, there's a series of briefs that get submitted to the IBIA. It's a panel of judges that would decide it. The last brief, I think, went in almost a year and a half ago now. So that's been sitting idle for quite some time. All of the land remains on the tax rolls pending any appeal until literally the final appeal, however far it may go based on either side appealing an earlier decision. In the meantime, the land remains on the tax rolls, which is one of the reasons the village has decided to contest these. We're talking about tens of thousands of dollars just for the Hobart share, let alone the county, the schools, NWTC share. So all of that, since I think 2008 is when the bulk of these applications were submitted to the BIA. So since then, the parcels have remained on the tax rolls and revenue's been collected. The other issue on fee to trust, though, is jurisdiction, not just the revenue, but do the local county, village, state laws, ordinances, zoning codes, do any of those apply? If it's put in trust, the answer, I guess in large part, if not entirely, is no. So the preservation of local jurisdiction and control over land use is another reason that the village has chosen to contest these, to just basically have these parcels treated as all other parcels within the village in terms of whatever ordinances or rules may apply. So that's the second main reason. It's not just the tax revenue. So the main thing is we are still waiting for a decision. Last year I probably said the last brief on the first one was 6 months ago. Now it's a year and 6 months. So the IBIA will be issuing a decision. After that occurs, either side will then, if they choose, have the right to appeal that decision to federal district. The other pending litigation has to do with the storm water management system. Going back years, the EPA required that there be some level of stormwater management to help eliminate pollution, runoff primarily into lakes, streams, whether it be farm fields or construction sites. It was mainly a runoff type issue. Required local governments, City of Green Bay, Howard, Hobart, Schwaben, have all implemented some type of stormwater management program as initially required by the EPA. And Hobart implemented theirs in, I think, 2007, and they did it village-wide, every parcel. The tribe initiated a suit against Hobart, I believe, in early, February of 2010, saying your stormwater management ordinances and the stormwater management fee that gets assessed on parcels to help run the program cannot and does not apply to land in trust. So they sued the Hobart, seeking a declaratory judgment from the federal district court judge saying your stormwater management plan does not apply on the land we already have a trust. I think it clearly applies to land in fee, no matter who owns it. But this is a trust land issue. One of the things brought up by by the tribe was, it doesn't apply to trust land because you don't have jurisdiction or controls. Our sovereignty, the tribe's sovereignty, prevents that from occurring. But the other issue was, even if it's owned by anyone, those stormwater fees should be paid by the United States, because for trust land, it is actually the federal government that holds title. The name on the deed of the land is United States of America. It's for the benefit of and for the occupancy of the tribe, whichever tribe across the country, but the actual title holder is the United States, and it's held in trust for the benefit of the local tribe. So the argument was, we don't think it's owned at all, but if it is owned by anyone, it's the title holder of the United States. The United States was made part of the lawsuit. Initially, the court said the United States has not officially refused to make payment, although the BIA wrote a letter saying you can't do this. There was no true official denial of a true demand for payment. So until that happened, the court said it's premature to have the U.S. involved. That all has since happened. The U.S. is now back involved after officially refusing to pay. So this matter was all briefed. I think the last briefs, not too long ago, I think a few weeks back, the final brief by the tribe's reply brief in the United States was filed with Judge Griesbach, the local federal district court judge. And he's got basically two decisions. One relates to whether or not the tribe would be subject to these regulations and the money, and whether or not the United States government would. So it's kind of two parallel things going on there. So that one, as of right now, we're waiting for a decision that was just recently completed as far as submissions to the judge. So we should hear that shortly. If either side, there's three sides, the tribe's a party, the federal government's party, and the village is a party. If any one of the three would receive a decision they were not satisfied with, they would have the right to appeal to the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals based out of Chicago. So that would continue on if someone was dissatisfied or felt that it made sense to do that. So those are the only two currently pending litigations relating to federal Indian issues. There's, always a couple other, occasional minor things that pop up, not just federal Indian law, but other legal issues, as far as a little broader than just the federal Indian law, some legal matters relating to, developers agreement. You see Centennial Center being built, those type of issues are kind of the normal ongoing things with a growing, migrant village. So, but nothing really out of the ordinary or kind of extraordinary litigation, except for maybe these two, tribal issues. That's pretty much the legal update.
I should have mentioned before too, we'll probably have some time for questions. We're going to wait to get through this, and then we'll have some time to interact with one another and question comments from you guys. So.
Sure.
Typically, we like to give a budget and financial update at the annual meeting. This is really, what I spend a lot of time on in the village. Clearly, in my position. So what I'd like to go through is the 2012 budget and where your tax dollars go. We won't spend too much time on the 2012 budget because we found that we're already a quarter of the way into the year. So I'll just give you the rundown, and I will say that all of our budgetary and financial information is on our homepage. And at our next village board meeting, May 15th, we'll be going through our audit presentation from year-end 2011 if anybody's interested in a little more detailed information. I'll also go over the 2012 sewer rate study results. In April, the village board selected a new sewer rate. I'll go over tax increment district financing. I'm kind of using that broad TIF, tax increment 101, to lead into making you aware of the financial position of our development in the north. The 2012 budget, fairly good news. A lot of communities struggled with their budgets this year with declining property values and a host of other things, collective bargaining issues and those types of things. The village board held the line on taxes this year. There was a 0% increase or zero increase in property tax rates for the village portion of the tax rates. Tax rate remained $4.20 per thousand as it was in 2011. We also had the ability to reduce our user charges for garbage and recycling by 6.5%. To you folks, that's about somewhere between $9 and $11 per year. We also reduced the user charges for the aforementioned user fees for stormwater utility. We reduced those by about 4.16%. It was about a $3 savings to the taxpayer. And additionally, we just had a rate increase in our water utilities in 2011, so those obviously remain unchanged for 2012. And I'll get into the sewer rate stuff a little later on. So where do we stack up with our municipal tax rates? Our municipal tax rate in Hobart is really competitive. We're the 4th lowest tax rate of any city or village in Brown County. One of the slides I'll preview a little later on kind of goes through our property valuation breakdown, as well as property valuation breakdowns of other communities. Considering we're 86% residential, and considering our geography, this is a really competitive tax rate. You know, we don't have the United Health, we don't have Oneida Street, we don't have a regional shopping mall, that large commercial tax base that typically helps you keep your tax rate down. So we're really proud of the tax rate. And just to give you a general history, this volatility in the tax rate is not what we want. This is what we've been able to accomplish in the last 4 or 5 years in the village of Hobart, a very flat tax rate trend. We're also very proud of that. One of the slides we always kind of go through, and I think everybody's aware of this, but it's nice, it's good for us to bring it out. Where do your property tax dollars go? Well, for those who reside in the Pulaski Community School District, for every tax dollar you spend from your bill, 23 cents is retained by the village of Hobart. So, and put it another way, 23% of your entire tax bill is retained by the village of Hobart. The other taxing entities, such as the Pulaski Community School District, the Brown County, of course, and WTC in the state, all also have a slice of that pie, which is your tax bill. For those of similar graphic here, for those residing in west of here, just in case you're interested, Hobart retains about 20 cents for every dollar. Just briefly, we just did a first quarter financial update at the village board level. Through April 16th, 2012, the village is at 77% of our expected revenues. This is very typical because the state share revenues come in at different times throughout the year. Obviously, they hold that money for cash flow purposes. And I think the majority is September or July and then September, October for like our big road aids and those things from the state. And again, good news, we're at exactly a quarter of our budgeted expenditures for the year through the first quarter, so that makes a lot of sense. I know this is a little difficult to see, but I just wanted to, again, talk with you folks about our recent sewer rate increase, which was approved in April 2012. The village hadn't had a sewer rate increase for 4 years, over 4 years. The Green Bay Met, or GBMSD, provides treatment to most of the communities in Brown County. What they do is pass along charges to the village of Hobart, the village of Ashwaubenon, all of the customer communities. GBMSD pass-through charges increased about 40% since our last rate increase in 2008. The costs now make up almost 1/3 of our entire utilities costs. So a third of our costs aren't directly controlled by committees and these 4 and 5 board members that make those decisions on your behalf and represent you. That's a little problematic, and we'll talk a little more about this. Another, I guess, reason or makeup of the rate, sewer-related debt from old sewer projects For a period of time, we just carried an interest payment on that. We didn't lock in long-term financing. That was for a range of issues. But now we are fully paying off our principal and interest on all outstanding sewer-related debt and water-related debt for that matter. And another reason for the need for the rate increase, we no longer have a general taxpayer subsidy to the water or to the sewer utility. When we went through the 2011 analysis of the water rates, we gave in a unique fashion, I guess, not to bore you with the details, that subsidy or that part of the general fund was given to relieve the water rates. So that was no longer available for sewer. We had to overcome that. So what was the makeup of the sewer rate? Well, the Water and Sewer Advisory Committee analyzed costs and needed revenues from the utility, and they met from about August 2011 through March 2012. So this was not part of our necessarily our budget deliberations for 2012. We needed some more time on this. They went with a recommended option, one of many. They went with a low customer growth option, option 3. And generally, that called for a conservative customer growth projection. We have a lot of development going on in the village. We have a lot of it under contract. We know we're going to realize it. We're very hopeful that we will realize everything that's under contract. But they didn't want to start at the assumption that all of the stuff that we have under contract or under developers agreements is going to come to fruition. They wanted to pick some customer growth projection in the middle to say, we'd rather be pleasantly surprised than have to ask the sewer users for another bigger rate increase in the coming years. The conservative growth, or the option that was chosen, also utilized $100,000 of utility cash on hand. That was done purposefully to offset the initial rate increase to you folks who are on the sewer. And we think, again, with utilizing that the conservative customer growth option, we won't be reliant on that $100,000. The recommended option, that was advanced by the Water and Sewer Committee. The village board selected that option. The average residential bill would be, you'll probably see this on your second quarter billing. For average residential, we're going from about $103 to $125 per quarter. Throughout the year, that'll be about $7.55 per month. So, and again, one of the things the committee and the board discussed was, we didn't have a sewer rate increase for 4 years. GBMSD increases their charges every year and passes it on to us. We got to look at this annually. We have to do smaller increases annually. Hopefully, those can be mitigated by the growth, but we do need to engage GBMSD. I selected this. I was reading this over the weekend. Some of you may have seen this in the press gazette for May 1st. Feedback sought on $147 million Green Bay wastewater upgrade. Green Bay met is seeking state approval for a project that will increase average residential customers' yearly bill from $130 to $200 by 2016. These costs will be directly passed on to Hobart, to Ashwaubenon, to Green Bay, to Lawrence, all of the communities in Brown County that receive treatment from GBMSD. It's important that there's only so much the 5 elected officials can do in this regard. It's important that the people in Brown County go and speak their mind on this. So we can mitigate some of these cost increases because they're just going to pass them on to us. After the sewer rate increase, I just want to let you know as one comparison of where we fall. Not ideal for us, truthfully. We're I think the 3rd or 4th highest for average residential users in Brown County. We're hoping, in the future with some growth. Obviously, utilities do not care about geography. They care about how much volume is pushed through the pipe. That's the only way you can keep your costs down is to increase your volume. So we're not where we want to be here, but we're obviously going to be taking a look at this every year and doing what we can about it. I do want to point out some cautions about using just our nearest neighbors as comparables. Watch out, the comparables are a little deceiving. As I mentioned before, this slide was going to be coming up. Hobart's 86% residential. we will probably never compete with sewer rates, or not for a very long time, with the Green Bays, the Ashwaubenons, and the Howlands. There's a couple reasons for this. We're still paying off our infrastructure costs from GBMSD. Most of those communities don't have those interceptor costs. They're completely built up. They're working on more maintenance issues than anything. Secondly, your commercial and your manufacturing users. We do not have an Animax. We do not have a United Health. We do not have a regional shopping mall. we don't have those large users of water and sewer that have hundreds and hundreds of thousands of gallons of use every year. Those types of uses offset the required user fees for residences. So I just wanted to let you know that there's some limitations to looking at just the nearest neighbors or the county, the ones that border us. I went through these conclusions already, so I won't go through them again. I'm going to switch gears now. I want to lay a bit of foundation for our tax increment finance discussion, which is the developments we have going on in Centennial Center in the north and a second tax increment district in the south end of town. Just a brief overview of key terms. TIF is tax increment finance. It's the financing mechanism that's used within these special districts. A TID is the actual physical boundary with the legal borders that goes through a statutory approval process, like we did for Centennial and like we did in the south end. Types of districts, there's a variety of types of districts. Both of ours are in this mixed use category. One of the limitations of that is you can't have more than 35% residential in newly platted parcels. Towns can only have TIFs for what they call TAP, tourism, agriculture, and forestry. Just again, basics continued here. Basically the intent of this is to spread the cost of development to all taxing entities. You freeze your property taxes or your valuation in 1 year, and the increase due to the new development is reinvested into that area that you've segmented off, special district. It's no longer, that makes the school districts, the NWTC, and the county have a little skin in the game. Usually the communities are left to their own devices to do economic development. That kind of puts some skin in the game for those folks. You do not use, if you do it correctly, you do not use general funds, general taxpayer dollars, or project costs. Debts and project costs are repaid with the increased tax revenues from within that district. Self-fund, self-sufficient. When you go to the general taxpayer for help with the TID, something went askew, and a lot of communities are in that situation because they're losing value in their tax increment districts. We kind of started using our tax increment tool after some of the worst times, so we probably will not experience that. You also attract development where it otherwise would not occur. I think it's safe to say we jump-started things on the west side of Green Bay with Centennial Center. That wouldn't just have occurred naturally. There was no water, no sewer, those types of things. Many types of public works projects could be included. And essentially what we'd like to do when the TID closes out, and it's actually statutorily mandated, 50% of that value has to go to property tax relief when we close it to them. So the whole goal is to, for a period of years, 20 years in our cases, do some economic development that could alleviate the tax burden later on down the road. Again, this is just a quick slide of the kind of how the tax increment grows. You basically freeze your base value here. And this is all retained by the village. The county, school district, and that portion of the taxes is retained by the village to reinvest back in the district, pay off infrastructure costs, those kind of things. When the TID terminates, all of the other overlying taxing jurisdictions again benefit from the value that was increased over time. So where are we at in Centennial Center? Well, we're pretty pleased with where we're at. Obviously, we have a lot of development going on. We are not at all concerned that this will not be a self-supporting TID. We've covered our initial $5 million infrastructure investment and then some. We have a lot of flexibility. So I just wanted to provide just a quick and dirty analysis analysis of our financial position. I've highlighted this section here because we do have a balloon payment in 2017 on a $2 million piece of debt. So that's why it looks a little crooked that way, but obviously we'll amortize it after that point, and we'll reduce the net revenue by the amount of the new debt service. These were based off of what we already have in the ground and what we have under contract. We're not throwing in $20 million of commercial valuation for a new medical clinic. We're not assuming things other than what we have under contract. So this is a pretty accurate depiction of where we're at here, and we're real pleased with where we're at. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Elaine. She's going to kind of give you guys some mapping and maybe some more specifics of our economic development strategies and tax increments 1 and 2.
Thank you, Andrew. I get to talk about, oh, this is the microphone. How about that? I get to talk about fun things. Andrew does our number crunching and has been doing an excellent job. Andrew, I think you need to coach me on how to do this. Did I get that right? That's the next one. Okay. It's too bright in here to see these very well. These are aerial views of Centennial Center beginning in October 2009 in the upper left, when it was essentially a big soybean field that we were starting in. We had brought the sewer a mile to the site, just about a mile, a little more than a mile, and water a quarter to a half mile to the site. And we were bringing in Centerline Machining as the first company in, and we were following that, EMT International PDA. By August of 2010, Centerline Machining and EMT are on board. The cobblestone community is well underway, and the first apartments are under construction. By September 2010, this aerial view here shows the cobblestone progressing, EMT finishing up and opening up. Now we're at November, these areas, and I really encourage you to go onto our homepage because these are beautiful. The 2011 aerials are just beautiful. They show dramatic progress in Centennial. We now have, just to give you some sense of numbers, we now have 104 of the Centennial States apartments fully leased up 100%. That's 104 families in Centennial States apartments. We have the cobblestone community is an 84-lot single-family homes. I'm told the last 5 permits to complete the 84 build-out come in next week. Cobblestone will be completely built out. Most of those homes are owned and occupied. And they'll be breaking ground very soon on the next neighborhood called Fieldstone Estates, which will be a little larger lot, a little larger home, a little higher market value. But the second neighborhood is coming in this year. And the second set of apartments is going to be built a Windermere, is that what this is? The Wyndham Lake. Wyndham Lake, just on the north side of the Centennial Estates apartments. A big, beautiful new multifamily complex also coming in this year. We all have, you've probably seen it out there, the big 2-story Fieldstone, the big 2-story assisted living facility is being built. And we've also got there are going to be 40 of the townhomes are completed, the last 8 will be completed shortly. 48 townhomes called Ravello. So when you're entering into Centennial Boulevard, you now see the apartments on the right, the Ravello townhomes on the left. You see the assisted living facility under construction on the other side of the roundabout. It's the EMT International Centerline Machining, Cobblestone Community Neighborhood. Not bad for 2 years. I mean, awesome. We are 5th in the state of Wisconsin for housing starts in 2011. We're just under Milwaukee and Madison. We're ahead of Green Bay, Appleton, any of the other big cities. Little Hobart in Centennial Center. We've been getting wonderful statewide recognition for this project. And I swear the hand of God is on it because things just keep coming along beautifully, really coming along beautifully. We as Andrew was providing numbers, we have $18 million in new incremental value we're trying to do, just so you have a sense of where our heads are at, is we really did listen to the community when we started the planning process here. And we really are trying our very best to preserve the rural quality of life, the northern atmosphere and ambiance of northern Hobart, the large farms and open space and area in southern Hobart. And we are trying to grow the tax base and meet unmet needs very strategically and in very small spaces. The Centennial Center area is up on the northern boundary. It's like 3% of Hobart's land. We're also opening up a southern tax increment district, and we're actually restarting the O'Hare Boulevard area that was attended as a business park years ago. You'll see that that's, well, I want to show you that's a picture of Centerline Machine with the buildings out of Centennial. And the EMT grand opening. And this picture here is the, you'll see this in tomorrow's Friday paper, or in the Friday paper, in a much better view. This is what the new assisted living facility is going to look like, and I swear it's going to be a park. It's really lovely. The landscape is just tremendous. The southern area, we'll get to that. To give you the boundary area, this northern boundary here is Fernando Road, and the southern boundary, and then Packerland Drive, and then Pine Tree. And then just south, around the Nathan area, that's the new tax increment district. And all those squiggly lines look a little odd because we had to carve out the developed land and only include undeveloped land in the area. But that is a new second tax increment district to start revenue there. Again, strategically on the little eastern boundary of Hobart. We've divided it into two planned development district zones. The green area between Fernando and Orlando will be primarily industrial, light manufacturing, and commercial. We really need that. We need jobs for our people. The orange or the gold area will be a combination of commercial and residential. So you will see new homes being built. I think what we're 23 or 25 down now in the tailwinds. 28 new homes already up in the gold area here, and another set of apartments will also be built there. But again, this is on the eastern boundary of Hobart. And I want to back up for just a moment because this tax increment district was just recently amended to bring in, we annexed from the town of Lawrence some beautiful commercial property along Packerland so that we can have this space. It was called Beecham property, so that we can bring this into our tax increment district and benefit from commercial development along Packerland for Hobart. And that was a cordial process with the town of Lawrence, but they don't want us to take any more. So that's the second tax.
Contacted by the property owner.
Oh, the property owner, and then that's true. The last piece is something coming up, and it's just in the startup conversation. But the Austin Straubel Airport recently completed a new FAA master plan for the airport. The old master plan, and the airport land is about 2,500 acres. The old master plan is all county land acquired by the county using federal funds and whatnot, zoned agricultural, and unavailable to anything but the airport. The new master plan has removed the old master plan, the proposed third runway that they're going to build, which was why they would not allow any development. The new master plan has verified that they don't need and won't need a third runway, and they are now going to open up lands owned by the county for leasing. They can't be sold or acquired, for long-term leasing and for economic development. For Hobart, that's going to mean about 638 acres along Pine Tree and some areas along, I want to say Fernando. Fernando? Yeah, Fernando area. That's going to open up the opportunity for us to recruit businesses that are aeronautical related and non-aeronautical related to create some pretty nice jobs for Hobart folks. folks around here. Schwabenau will also have about 700 or so acres for development. And eventually we'll get this map in the paper for you too, to show you the properties along 172 are going to be available for better commercial development, and along Packerland and down along, just the general airport vicinity. We're now having these wonderful startup conversations about making better use of the airport land. The airport and the county are supportive of that. And for Hobart, that means some more strategic places to create jobs for Hobart residents. And to bring in some, and that's right next to, that's really the southern boundary of our second tax increment district too, so it's all going to coordinate nicely together. I would like to say that one of the reasons we've been able to do these things, bring 28 homes into tailwind, and we have, what was the number for year-to-date of the housing permit?
36.
We've had 36 housing permits just this year, just this January 1st. One of the reasons we've been able to do all these things is really to the credit of Alan. Alan has a workload on his desk that would stop trucks, and he just does a tremendous job, And so we have that. We have the benefit of a wonderful engineering firm, Robert E. Lee. Randy, our chief of police, has been really helpful to the residents out at Centennial. They're welcoming them in the neighborhood, helping them get a neighborhood watch group started and whatnot. Every staff member has had a piece of the action on developing our community. None of us operates in a vacuum. And it, for me, it has been a complete joy to work in a setting like that, with responsive people like that. And then have the checks and balances, the guidance of Andrew and the financial, making sure that we are keeping sound financially as we transition very carefully from what was just a big bedroom community to a community that's going to be able to sustain itself in the long term economically. And I will say that we are the envy of many of the other communities around here, and that's a good thing. That's a really nice thing. We have never done this before. We've just been accidentally successful. So it's been a pleasure. I think that's all I have. So whatever you think.
Well, I think it's worth mentioning our biggest enablers are our trustees, our board members. They're really supportive of our efforts, and they're willing and eager to meet on a dime for building permits, developers agreements. We really try our best to be very welcoming to the development community. And again, we're doing this on a very small percentage of our land base, so we can preserve the character of Hobart that we all love. I'm just beginning to love it. My stop 2 stops ago was downtown Milwaukee, and then I moved to Appleton, and now my wife and I are living in Hobart, and we're losing the yuppie lifestyle that we once had. So we're really happy about it. But with that, I saw some questions go up on the legal discussion, if we wanted to start there. Were there some questions on the legal briefing that we were?
Yeah, I had one.
Sure.
Just was curious about how much of that land, trust land for the Oneidas was developed versus non-developed. Do you have a percentage?
I don't have a percentage. I know there is a fair amount of each. A lot of it is, rural acreage. I don't know if the tax base or tax dollar would shed any more light, but I think
It became an issue. Too much of the land, in the view of many members, was undeveloped. It was acquired and laid fallow, and wasn't providing homes and jobs for private members. And that kind of promoted a transition and a change in leadership, where the new role now, the present leadership, is not so focused on land acquisition as it once was. It's more focused on providing resources on the land they have. And the wonderful thing about Frank's work and the legal actions that we've taken is we've been able to keep and preserve the tax base There have not been any trust parcels taken in, there's been no parcels taken in trust, I think, since 2008.
Well, I think, well, before that, most of these applications I was talking about were first made in about 2008.
Yeah.
So by objecting to that, they stayed on the tax rolls for 4 years.
Yeah.
I believe Hobart's share of the tax revenue for those 2,900 acres, and don't quote me on this, but I believe it's just a hair over 40,000, and I think a year. And I think so times 4 years, that's about 160,000. I think Andrew, you saying what is the Hobart share compared to everybody, a quarter of the total roughly?
Yeah.
You know, so if you multiply then that by 4, you're talking, you know, maybe 150, 160,000 a year since '08. That's the tax revenue's been collected and preserved, and it, you know, it will, until it's in trust, it stays on the tax roll, and hopefully if we're successful, it stays out of trust. That is preserved.
The reason I asked is obviously if it's developed, it's worth more to the village of Hobart for the tax base than if it's vacant.
Yeah, it's some of each, and I don't want, it's another, I guess, kind of
And you have
related
to
issue.
offset that against our legal fees to fight this.
Right, well, and I certainly think, I don't have a direct comparison, but given the tax savings that just Hobart received, you know, you're there, you add in the overall tax benefit to NWTC, the Pulaski School District, your tax revenues saved far exceeds every nickel spent on legal fees. Just the actual revenue in the door had Hobart chosen not to object since '08. So in that sense, it's definitely been a, you know, investment, if you want to call it that, that's paying off well in the short run. And that's true even if ultimately Hobart was not successful. We've already collected more revenue, or at least the community as a whole has, and not just the village, greatly exceeding the legal fees.
And did you say that the Washington, the Bureau of Indian Affairs, has already ruled that against us, so to speak?
Well, not the Washington, it's a multiple step process. The application goes to the Bureau of Indian Affairs, and a regional director, you know, an office regionally, I think out of Minnesota, decides, yes, they meet the criteria, we accept their application, we make a decision, this land shall go into trust. Then there's a 30-day window for someone to appeal that decision, which Hobart did. That appeal goes to this IDIA in Washington, D.C. And it's not a regular federal court, it's an administrative type court. But that's the first kind of official review of the first lowest level decision. You know, so the bureaucratic decision is now appealed to the IDIA. The IDIA has not ruled on any of them yet, despite, like I said, a year and a half or so since the last submissions were given to them.
Well, I think another thing to add is once they go off the tax roll, they're off the tax roll. So you can multiply that by 200 years if you wanted to assess the impact of that. And it's not only a financial impact, it's a jurisdictional impact that Frank mentioned before. There's areas of trust parcels that are unkept right next to high-end residential neighborhoods. You know, we don't think that that's a sustainable position for the village to be in, nor would you know, any of us want to live next to something like that. You know, so it's just more than a financial tax impact. I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
Well, Lori has a question first.
I was going to say that it would seem that West Superior School District, the Pulaski School District, and Collins have most of them in terms of this. But they don't, any of them don't seem willing to help fight the fight. It's kind of interesting. That's a lot of money out of schools. It's more than 25,
It would
right?
be a substantial loss to both school districts as those properties fell off the property tax base. And ironically, those school districts do some serious political correctness, and but for our assistance, they would be losing money. You know, and
And I would think Brown County would have a very vested interest too. I mean, I don't understand.
Yeah.
But we seem to be fight for a lot of people.
I think you're absolutely right. You know, for whatever reason, you know, some of those communities just have made a conscious decision not to oppose fee to trust applications.
I think there's, if I might add in a general sense, I think that Hobart's positions and its legal positions and its communications over recent years have sort of set a cordial line in the sand and a legal line in the sand. And I think that has been acknowledged. And I also think it contributed to a change in the leadership. And the new leadership has has rescinded the ordinance not to communicate with Hobart. It is opening up some dialogue, and we're trying to take baby steps to find dialogue on common ground. We agreed that our big, serious legal issues are in the courts for the courts to decide, and we leave those there. And so there's an improved climate right now. It's certainly not nearly as acrimonious as when I first arrived or in the past years. It's not the best, and everybody has to keep both eyes open, but it's much improved because they're focusing on resources for their tribal members, and as they create jobs and resources for the tribal members, that kind of lifts the community of Hobart as well.
One example of some of that common ground we're finding, they own a bunch of acreage in our southern tax increment district.
Yeah.
You know the old story, the painful story about the Southeast Industrial Park. We put some money in the ground in the late 90s, early 2000s, and the tribe purchased all the property around it and built a road to nowhere. They did so intentionally and, you know, purposefully, to be frank. They want to do economic development. They want to create jobs for their tribal members. Let's form an economic development partnership. We have this tax increment tool that can be of use to them. They certainly have resources that you know, could be mutually beneficial to the village also. You know, so that's just one example. That one example. Sure.
That area you're just talking about between what you're, I couldn't quite hear what you were saying because I don't use it. But the majority of that area is owned by the tribe. How is that going to affect the development in that area?
Well, the majority is, I'd say, maybe 1/6, maybe 1/5 at the most. The tax increment district's maybe 700 acres down there, and I think they're probably in the 150 to 200 range. So maybe.
What kind of steps?
Between Pine Tree and Cottonwood and Fernando and Orlando, the tribe owns over half of that.
Yeah, but the tax increment district is bigger than that.
I'm talking about the area.
Sure, between Fernando and Orlando, they probably own half of it, sure.
Yeah,
Sure.
I think more than that. But
Sure.
very much you can do, but as far as development, you can't do much with that. The stuff that belongs to the tribe, you got no control over that.
Well, unless they're willing. We don't own any, the village of Hobart doesn't have any public land in the second tax increment district.
I understand, I'm just saying, when the time comes,
Sure.
there's not much you can
But
do.
I've had,
When it belongs to the tribe.
I've had conversations with the tribal chairman and with staff from their economic development department, and we're going to be pulling together a conversation about, I think they have 13 parcels in the tax, and we deliberately put them in the tax increment district. They're undeveloped parcels owned by the United Tribe. They're paying annual property taxes. We wanted to put them in that tax increment district for two reasons. One, we wanted to encourage them to use that land, and they too could, since they're paying taxes, the increment off of their taxes can be used as a resource to new companies that they bring in or things like that. And the other is, they've applied to put those parcels into federal trust. We've objected to that, and it's in the courts, and we wanted to put that tax increment district around there as additional legal clout, so that those properties never go into federal trust. So there's a sort of a win-win, where we're going to be willing to work with them to show them how they can use the property taxes they pay, bring new companies and jobs for folks on their land by long-term leasing, and at the same time, we keep that in the property tax base, so it doesn't go to trust.
But it doesn't seem like the property tax bothers the tribe, because we try to rent some of that stuff for farmland in there, and they don't want to rent it. So if you want to get their tax money out, they're going to use rent it for. Most of it is leased out.
Yeah,
But there's parcels in there that's just throwing weeds and brush in there.
yeah.
and they don't wanna rent it out, so evidently they ain't worried about their tax dollars, or otherwise they try to recover it by renting it.
Well, there's, they're going through some shifts in personnel and some shifts in politics. And I mean, they've had pretty serious changes, so a lot of things are kind of slowly coming online. They weren't doing anything with the land at all for years. Now they want to, and now they have to move through the process of, well, how can they? Yeah, and so we're available to assist on the tax increment district parcels and in other small ways where we can find common ground that do not interfere with Hobart's jurisdiction or authority, and that can assist them in accomplishing some goals for their members.
You got something to say?
Well, I was just going to say, there's a distinction between trust land and fee land. Obviously, the fee land is the tribe just owns the real estate, like, most of us own our homes. It's just your name's on it, and you're subject to state, local, federal, village rules and regulations and taxes. It's the transfer into trust which changes all that. So as long as land is in fee, for the most part, that land is treated just like any other parcel in terms of the owner's, obligations, rights, etc. So, that's kind of the other reason, the village is trying to prevent more of that fee land going into trust, because that's fee land and it can be treated as everyone else's. So that's kind of the distinction. I think the vast majority of their fee land, and correct me if I'm wrong, it is encompassed in that 2,900 acres that's currently pending in applications to go into trust. That's, that's kind of the lion's share of what they have left in fee is currently applied. And I think there is 1,200 currently in trust. Is
1,581 or something like that.
That's already in trust from, years and years ago.
Which is 1,581 acres in comparison to Hobart's 23,000 acres. So the reality is, as awesome as we were worried about the land acquisition and land falling off the property tax, only 1,581 acres are owned by the United States and no longer on the property tax. All that remainder is land owned in fee, and we have blocked them from putting it into trust. And that court discussion will be appealed for years. We will have at least 6-7 years for those annual property taxes, and we will likely prevail in the end.
If it goes through the entire legal process, they lose. Is that the problem with that? In this situation, we would have that.
No, the rule is it's taxable until the final appeal is done and over, and there's no more recourse, then it goes into trust, but every tax dollar you collected up till then is yours. Yes.
Frank, we confine this discussion to Indian affairs, but do you also review all village contracts and agreements and those kind of things to look out and make sure that things are legal and with developers? Do you do all that as well?
Well, our firm does. Certainly if it's any agreement or contract or issue with tribal affairs, most likely or not, it would be me. Our firm, I'm with Davis and Kilthau. So either there's also Jim Kelly, there's other attorneys depending on the specific area of expertise and workload, in terms of who will do it. So our office as a whole, the answer is yes, and I think there's very close scrutiny to the developers agreements. I had a little bit involvement. I was not certainly the main person. We have others who have, just greater experience or repetition in that. We do a lot of municipal work. We represent a lot of cities, villages, counties across the state. So we can tap into some really precise expertise on whatever issue comes up.
This isn't legal, but it's a question I asked. We used to do separate the recyclables and all that. Now we're mainstream, the single stream recyclables. How is that working out?
Really well. That was probably the biggest reason we were able to reduce the user charges this year. We found, at least the last year, maybe the last 2 years, a pretty healthy balance in terms of our overall cost versus what the user charges were. So we made a concerted effort to reduce those this year and take a look. We take a look at that obviously annually. But I'd say I don't know. I wouldn't be able to hazard a guess at any other reason we have realized those savings other than the single street. we're rebated back for those commodities at the rate of exchange of those commodities for tin, aluminum, those kind of things, paper. So it's a good question.
Andrew?
Yes.
Our tonnage has gone up considerably since we've gone to single stream. And then we met with the DNR and they gave us great reviews on our program that we have in Hobart.
Ma'am?
Yeah, I was just wondering about the tax incremental financing. What incentives do you give businesses? How much of their taxes do you forgive or take them off the tax rolls in the TIP district?
We've incented a couple ways. We have given cash up front. We've also given cash for specific infrastructure projects. For instance, with the Lexington Group, their initial incentive was $1.4 million, but it was for the purpose of road, water, and sewer to facilitate their development. The other mechanism to use is, as you mentioned, rebating back your taxes. We've done that. We've done as high as 40% for a period of years, and as little as 5%. So there's a variety of ways to incentivize. We're also, we're in a nice position that we own the land. We've been able to write down land costs and things like that as well.
How does that weigh on the infrastructure costs? Is that part of the negotiation and the agreements that are negotiated in terms of moving infrastructure a mile in?
Yes.
As in the Centennial Project?
Yeah. We try to value the land at least what we stuck into the land. Whether we get paid for that land or it's incentivized, it is valued in the developer's agreement as their incentive.
And then all of these contracts are then reviewed by the village attorney, and then they sign his law firm, and then they sign off on those contracts.
Correct. Yep. That's exactly right. I work with Craig's partner for the most part, Jim County. Typically, I review those with layout terms and do the negotiations. Then he captures those in a development agreement. Those go through an approval process again with the village board, also of course. Especially with any outlay of funds and things like that. But that's really the process we've done 4 or 5, I think. So.
Last question on the same topic. How do you gauge your rate of return in your negotiated contracts with businesses, and as you give them cash or incentives or that type of thing? When do you see a turnaround or a rate of return in terms of a positive growth with lowering taxes and creating cost-effective infrastructure build-outs?
Great question. I'm glad somebody's asking non-tribal affairs questions. I appreciate that. Typically, we see a return right away on the project. We don't incentivize, 100% of property taxes back or anything like that. So typically, we keep a margin. We're in terms of negotiations. We look at, we've been somewhere between 10 and 17, I think, maybe 18. I think 17 might have been the highest one. So if you're bringing a $1 million project, that's 17% of that is what the overall incentive will be total. And then we decide if that's going to be upfront, a return every year of a portion of their taxes, or some combination of that. For instance, the one with, and that would be a pay-go situation where you're just sharing revenues you otherwise wouldn't have. For instance, this Fieldstone negotiation for the next single-family phase, they're willing to produce $13 million in new valuation. We've said we'd go up to 16% of that, and that's going to be, that's not cash we're going to outlay. That's tax revenue we're going to share with them each year, 50-50 up to the value of that 16% of 13 million, if that makes sense.
With so many developers that are having a tough time in this economy, do you have assurances that they're going to stay solvent and the project is going to go from beginning to end?
Typically, we have land. We've done land reversion clauses. where we're going to recover backfill land if they don't perform. And then we would also, in the case of the residential, we also benefit from the infrastructure assets, which technically is part of their incentive to put in the ground they dedicate to us, which in any situation, whether they perform or not, becomes a village asset after they dedicate.
One more point.
Sure.
On the new homes and the new companies and the new users, the new hookups to water and sewer are an overall benefit to all the residents of Hobart because it starts better utilizing the infrastructure and spreading the costs.
Well, there've been a lot of communities that have been left holding the bag for infrastructure with developments that haven't been successful in this economy. So that's why I asked a question on rate of returns and and how you're measuring these things, because we've seen a lot of that statewide go bust.
Those are great questions. Very insightful also. A lot of communities have abused tax increment finance. To be quite frank, do you need to give a bank $1 million to move down the road? Probably not. That's some of the abuses that are out there. We've been, we are a conservative group as it is financially. So we've made sure that we've had a margin right off the bat when we've negotiated these agreements. So although we're not realizing maybe 100% of the tax revenue, we're always covering any costs we would have up front, and then putting some towards the tax increment project or district itself. Yes, sir. It's not going to be about roundabouts, it's about. You got me with that one last year.
No roundabouts.
I saw a smirk on your face when you did that. Okay.
I can compliment the board and staff on your successes in continuing building. The residential has been successful, commercial has been successful. What's happening to the retail?
Oh, thank you for asking. Not nearly enough, as you know. We do have a little ray of hope, and maybe this is something we didn't mention, but his question was, he was complimenting us on the residential and the business, and he's saying, where's the retail? And that is my total focus now, because we're comfortable with it. We're doing fine with the residential and the manufacturing businesses. The problem is, what I hear is that small businesses are having difficulty getting lending. Bankers are not lending small businesses, so they're not getting financing. It's also difficult for small businesses, retail, restaurants, whatnot, to buy land, build a building, and start up the company. And so what they really need is tenant space. They need to be able to lease a building and be a tenant, at a reasonable tenant rate. So that's been an obstacle for a couple of years because, as you probably know, throughout the Brown County area, there's an awful lot of vacant buildings with much less expensive tenant space leased per square footage than in new construction in Centennial. So that has been a real sticking point that has slowed us bringing in the retail. That and the consumers, the businesses say, well, we need more rooftops. Well, we've got the rooftops rolling in. So that's not an issue. The good news is that the board has recently agreed, and we're putting the funding in place to extend Centennial Boulevard from the ramp where it is at the roundabout, past the new assisted living, and all the way to hook it up with North Overland. We're also going to do some improvements in North Overland, and the state DOT is going to put some improvements out on 29 with J-turns at VV. So the underground work on extending Centennial Boulevard to North Overland will begin this fall. We'll surface and build the boulevard in the spring of 2013. Now that opens up the western land that the village owns. That brings the water, sewer, fiber optics, and maps, streetlights, brings everything out there to North Overland, and it opens up a nice western access, quick access into Centennial. It makes those lands ready for development. Andrew and I are in preliminary conversations with some pretty wonderful players, including the state, to do a visioning plan for our village square. We're working very hard I'm also working with developers to build a little multi-tenant space. So there are conversations that we are having right now to bring those consumers. I want a bakery out there, I want an ATM machine, I want the employees to have a place to go for lunch.
So we have land already approved for retail space?
We do, right there by the roundabout, right there in front of EMT, that property is available, and the property between Ravello Townhomes and the Cobblestone community is available, and we're working with parties on those properties now. But it's a matter of bringing the people together, getting a building where the new construction tenant square footage lease is affordable, getting the banks to come on board and lend the startup companies. We're really not ready for the great big franchises, the big box things and the ones that need, huge traffic. That's going to be several years out, but what we are ready for is the small to moderate sized businesses.
That was one of the points I made earlier, and to your points, ma'am, or your questions. When I went down the projections, a lot of people falter in projecting that they're going to have that retail. They're projecting they're going to have those big users. We always ask ourselves during the negotiations, are we going to be solvent and not ask the general taxpayer for help with this TID if nothing more happens ever from this day forward? That's a good litmus test for us. And we've achieved that benchmark. So
I realize you've only been here for 4 years.
Sure.
And,
it seems like longer than that.
But this $1.9 million balloon payment that's due in 4 years, how was that approved? That was initial infrastructure investment?
Was it the one in 17 that we're going to do? I think 1.95.
Yeah, maybe it was in 5 years.
That is for, and we actually haven't borrowed that money yet. That was for the extension of the boulevard and the improvements to Overland that Elaine just mentioned. We had to, just to back up, the initial 2009 investment in infrastructure was about $5 million. That is coming due for refinancing or refunding in August of 2012. The DOT has notified us that they're going to be shutting down access at Sunlight Drive. Well, there goes the commercial forever if we don't have viable access. So we're going to do some improvements, getting the road getting Centennial Boulevard over to Overland, widening Overland a little bit to facilitate the new intersection at Maplewood Meets, making it a viable alternative. We've also successfully, I think a lot of people would be aware, the DOT to build a frontage road from the new county FF interchange, right by Galleria Golden there and Robert E. Lee, back through along the highway to Sunlight. That's about a $1.6 million project at their expense, but it does promote or provide us 2 viable access points from east and west to attract that commercial and retail that we're really hoping to make it into a commercial park house.
Well, since you have a $1.9 million obligation, don't forget that DOT is obligated under eminent domain. If it's cutting off your access to your industrial park, that it needs to provide a similar or an adjacent access. So they should be helping you out so that we don't have this $1.9 million forecasted obligation.
We kind of had to kick them in the butt to understand that, but that's
no, they'll understand it.
That's exactly what they did. They did come to light. Obviously our business patrons, our business owners, EMT and Centerland, were furious. The village all along when we planned this project, Sunlight was not going to close until there was a
Did we know about that when we started on this project?
No. Sunlight was not supposed to close until there was an interchange at Maplewood at VV 29, an overpass at Pine Tree into Howard. Not highway access, but nonetheless access into Howard. And then the interchange, the diamond interchange at FF. When we planned Centennial, we were under those assumptions. They said, we're only gonna do the one interchange at FF. We're gonna do these temporary improvements to VV. There's no overpass plan at Pine Tree, but we're still gonna close sunlight on it. So, you know, we rattled the sabers and, you know, that they're funding the road.
Would you petition that statement that you just made, for the frontage road along 2932, connected to Galleria home? Is that what you said?
No, Bob, you're aware of the diamond interchange that's going on at FF, right? They're gonna do another lovely roundabout at Navajo. Yeah. And then from,
The point that you're going to go from Galleria home, along 2932, you're going to have to sunlight.
correct. Do you know where the current Golden Pond Park Court
Yes.
cul-de-sac is? It will extend from that cul-de-sac along 29 and they're more or less their right of way and connect back up with sunlight.
Then why in the hell do we need that monstrosity of the roundabout? And now, how can you justify moving a home?
They're closing access where Golden Pond currently hits Hillcrest.
Yeah, they can't do that, because we had a moratorium there, and all this was settled long before they even drew plans for the overpass at FF. So it was a 1.5-year moratorium so that they could develop a plan. And Tom Hughes had developed his whole park based on that plan. And that off-ramp that they are going to have coming from going east on FF,
Okay.
they allowed him to put his road in there because it was not going to conflict with the off-ramp. Now you're telling me they're going to close that off?
Correct. And that's been that way for a couple of years.
You know what? The Department of Transportation has become a road outfit. They could give a damn less of what the hell happens to the public's money. They're wasting it,
Exactly.
pouring it on the rabbit. And I really don't know
Have we engaged the DOT on some of these issues?
What's that?
Have we engaged the DOT on some of these issues?
We're constant discussion with DOT on all this
I
stuff.
mean, get them in here and tell them what to talk to.
29. They had an informational meeting and shame on us for not providing some of the materials for the 29 projects here tonight, but they had an informational meeting last Thursday. I hear it was more of a misinformational meeting, from what I understand, but, you know, if anybody wants to come into the village office, we have their plans, we can kind of go down the road, so to speak, with you.
Those informational meetings, they just tell you what they're going to do. They don't care if you have any information input or not. I used to attend all of them. I don't attend any of them anymore because of the rogue attitude. I'm sorry to get heated up.
One of you, not one of
Yeah, we have one of you.
Yeah.
Why did they do that? Why didn't they leave that alone?
The grading for the off-ramps, if you're in your car sitting at Golden Pond Park Court right now on Hillcrest, you're going to be looking at a pile of dirt about 20 feet in the air because of the grading necessary for the
How
off-ramp.
many of the property need? We're going to need a hole.
No, the frontage road where the roundabout is being built at Navajo. That is the beginning of a frontage road that comes back up and looks into Golden Pond. Yeah.
I'm just saying, why didn't they bring it all on, hold it on top of the road?
One guy's called engineer. He ought to go back to school.
Are there any other questions?
One more.
Sure.
We still consider the tree community after we got, other than even trails, we really got pushing.
I know.
How much fight did you guys do on that?
Hours and hours and months and
I
months.
actually could probably speak to that, and one reason I care about the 5 or 6 people asking to come here for people to represent that. This group in front of you is about the only group in the state that fought hours and hours and hours and costs, and we still got some skin in the game. We're still trying to number one, stop this from happening in other communities. I mean, at this point, what happened was very unjustified and extreme. That they filed with the PSC, they refiled with the PSC, the Public Service Commission, worked actively with our state representatives, both in the Senate, came out several people spent many days standing in the yard with us, tree cutters. Rich Heidel was out, Elaine was out. This group went above and beyond. The result isn't what we wanted. The same exact thing just happened in Bellevue. Exactly, with the same lines and the same story. So they're just marching up the state. So.
With a moratorium, our board, I think, put a moratorium in place for a good 9 months, I want to say. Definitely 6 months, maybe closer to 9. Bellevue board didn't go. I think it was a split vote, but their fallback was, okay, we'd like to partner with the village to get, hopefully provide some more clout for that rulemaking request in the PSC.
The rulemaking just is that the PSC has some control over what vegetative management is. Because right now, nobody has any control at any level. They can do whatever they want.
Is this for the power transmission lines?
Yes, sir.
Is that what that
The
is?
transmission lines, yeah.
Sure.
You went out there over on the update for trees. The gypsy moth program has really been successful. I haven't had to kill a caterpillar in quite a while. It used to be every day example. But we have another problem in our conservatory area.
Garlic mustard?
Garlic mustard.
I heard that already.
It can also kill trees, so.
One of your neighbors asked us to take a look at if there's any grant opportunities for that. I hear that they usually kill that off in the fall, not spring, because whatever they use is a little noxious for the other.
That has to be really early. This year was had in February.
So we could definitely look into that too. I'm not sure what's out there for funding. We don't have anything in our budget this year for it. That's not to say that these five can't make a decision to find that, but.
And not to digress, but because ATC has opened up a clear-cut corridor, we've been told by a bunch of people that we are just ripe for invasive species. That whole corridor of private property is going to just be, there's down branches that are going to drop, the emerald ash borer, that the gypsy moth will just take over. I mean, that we have a potential environmental crisis. I mean, not to exaggerate things, because it's just right for the taking. So.
This mustard stuff goes like wild.
Yeah. Garlic mustard, it destroys the natural forest. It's got 3 different stages.
I couldn't tell you. It's not my area of expertise.
When they go through, like she was just mentioning with that plants, do they, is there something between November, I think, and March? You can't cut any old trees because.
Oh, well.
Yeah. So when they do that, what's stopping them from cutting an old tree?
Well, I think that came into the moratorium. We tried to time our moratorium with the oak wilt so we could, by default, extend our moratorium. I remember us having those discussions. There was some gamesmanship on our part, I guess you could say. Yeah, they're having some hearing on Monday or something.
I would encourage any of you, I mean, two of your holding is the new plan of ATC to build a whole new line to the north up to the UV.
What are they doing? Are they trying to make goals, through here? Or?
They'll probably do something strikingly similar to the game plan that they just put on Hobart that was so devastating to our properties. I will be, I have a really bad attitude towards ATC. The road agents. They are immune to the PSC so far. They are immune to every possible regulator. They just do what they want to do. And it's a service that we all need, and the energy that they provide, but the attitude and the cost efficiencies that are just costly to anyone involved. It's just unconscionable. Just really what the property owners in Hobart went through, and now Bellevue is going through, and now anybody involved in the path of that new line, it's not fun to deal with ATC. So I encourage you to go to those meetings and speak your mind.
Because if you haven't been through it, you doubt the stories people tell. You're like, oh yeah, you don't know about your mind. It's extreme beyond belief. I mean, it honestly, the threats. I just talked to him about here, who said that they piled wood on their lawn and it wasn't their wood, and they asked them to remove it. And the guy crossed his arm and said, no, I could have cut down that arborvitae. It's about 49 feet. You still want me to move the lawn pile? I mean, honestly, I said, document it, write it down, sign it, because we might need all of those things. It's just, might be 5 years from now or 10 years from now. But if you've had an interaction with this company that's immoral, unethical, possibly illegal, we need to fight this in the long haul for everybody else. I mean, they're terrible.
We had several assurances from them for a variety of things, and I mean, it was like 180 when they went down. Exactly the opposite of what they told us would occur with our residents.
I've never experienced anything like this. You really don't believe it. I remember thinking, oh yeah, right? Companies don't operate that way. You think the DOT is bad? This company talks so good.
A similar company, WPS, for decades has been in the same industry with the same kinds of lines, doing the same kind of public safety protections, and has always been, you know, there really is no big track record of problems with WCPS and adjacent property owners. They have always cooperated and worked in a common sense approach. But ATC looks at its bottom line, does the clear cutting because they want to go up there again, and it's just been brutal. So that's the contrast. There are energy firms that work right and well and do good things. ATC is not among them.
Well, I think one of the major sources of heartache too was WPS used to own those lines. And they had a vegetative maintenance program where they'd go in and treetop, you know, those kind of things. Whereas when, I don't know if it was a purchase or whatever it was, ATC gained control of the easements. ATC took a new policy that we were going to clear cut everything. So where WPS was coming back out every 10 years or 7 years or whatever it was, you know, clearly ATC doesn't want to be there for 25 or more, unfortunately.
I'm surprised the residents right down the street there. He's clearly underneath the line, but surprised that they can take his house down.
Oh, there's those instances.
Yeah, around the other tree on his property, you know. But if his home is underneath it, I'm surprised that they didn't say that.
So I guess to sum up what I'm here tonight, to kind of representing a bunch of people, is for the rest of you to know, that literally, this group sitting in front of you has gone above and beyond. Even though it doesn't look like it from what happened, they did everything they could, and they continue to do things. And I think you're going to hear more about this because we're not done fighting yet. I mean, we're still going to try to figure this out. Just replanting them. You know, what can we do to make it work again? And those are still things that are my thing. So thank you very much. So yeah, everyone heard the call.
Thanks for your comments. That's about it. We'll hang around too. If you had any questions you didn't want to post to the group, we'll hang around for a while, but thank you very much for coming.